Hi, I'm Gary Stokes, and I will be the moderator for the debate today, featuring Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers and former WSU Spokane Chancellor Lisa Brown. I'd like to thank both of them for being here today and allowing us to be a part of it. And I'd also like to thank the members of the Rotary 21 Debate Committee for their work on today's debate. Let's try that. Now, the rules, because we have to have them. The questions posed by the moderator were previously collected from Rotary 21 members. The questions are carefully secured, so neither candidate has been able to preview them. A coin flip determined the order of speaking and answering questions, including the first opening statement and the last closing statement. Each candidate will get a minute and a half open, a minute and a half close, and a minute and a half to answer questions directed to them. After each direct question, there will be a 45-second rebuttal for the opponent. The timekeeper will wave. It's my timekeeper. There he is. Thank you. Will wave when there are 15 seconds remaining in any time period and will audibly say time when it is over. Please do not go over your allotted time. The moderator or the timekeeper may penalize a participant for going over time. The moderator may press a candidate if they did not answer a question directly, which could also result in a time penalty. The candidates are able to submit a secret question to be posed to their opponent. The secret question should be phrased as a question and not a way to make a statement. The moderator may edit the question for brevity and clarity. Each candidate gets a free 1-minute card to use any time by notifying the moderator at the end of any segment. If it's unused, the candidate may extend the closing statement. There's no requirement to use the free 1-minute card. It's an option to allow a candidate to clarify an issue or a position. By participating, candidates are agreeing to these rules. We remind our members and guests that no applause or outward expressions of agreement or disagreement are allowed. This certainly extends to any candidate guest or invitee. So I will ask them to join me on the stage here, and while I introduce them. Our guests today are familiar to all of us. Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who will be on my left, is a 7-term Congresswoman and the highest-ranking Republican serving in Congress.
Oops. I'm sorry. I'm not the highest Republican, though. I'm the Republican. Oh, sorry.
Highest-ranking Republican woman.
Okay, thanks.
She is a former Washington State representative and worked on her family farm. Democrat Lisa Brown is a former Washington State representative and senator and was Washington's first female state Senate majority leader.
On the Democrat side. Fact check.
This is much more fun than I thought I'd have. She is the former chancellor of WSU Spokane and a former college professor. Please welcome our guests today. As a result of winning the coin toss, Representative McMorris Rodgers will have the first opening statement.
Okay. Thank you, Gary, and to all the Rotarians. Thank you for hosting us today. And I appreciate your example every day in our community, giving back, whether it is the new vaccination clinic, the fountain at the Riverfront Park that I enjoy taking the kids to, or all the work that you've done to eradicate polio around the world. It's really a great example. What a difference 2 years makes. And our economy is booming today. And for the people of Eastern Washington, hardworking men and women, their lives are better off now. And for me, I am proud of a record of leadership and results, whether it is the progress that we're making and making sure our veterans get the care that they need, our work to rebuild the military and secure Fairchild Air Force Base, and isn't it great that we're making progress on healthy forest? Eastern Washington's story is about hard work and determination. It's the story of my grandma's great-grandma, who headed west on the Oregon Trail. She left twin 2-year-old boys and an abusive husband in search of a better life. And here she found that. Because in America, you're not defined by your past, but you're empowered by who you can become. That same pioneering spirit is what took me to Congress. And I'm proud to have worked to get results every day. My commitment is to continue to work for a bright future so that everyone can live the Eastern Washington dream.
Chancellor Brown.
Thank you. It's great to be here with fellow Rotarians at Rotary 21, doing what you do best, one of the things you do best, which is sponsoring thoughtful consideration of things that really matter in our community, our nation, and our world. I know many people here, because you are so engaged and civically active, have probably already figured out who you're supporting for Congress. But just in case there are a few of you who are undecided, let me suggest a couple of things. I hope you don't make the decision based on the attack ads that are going to now be incessantly in your mailbox and on your TV screen, because they fail the Rotary four-way test. And I hope you don't make them just on what my opponent and I say that we support or oppose, but rather I would suggest you look at what we have actually accomplished and what we've actually voted for and against. I think it's really important not just to talk about what we support, but to actually accomplish tough things, working with people, especially in this particular political climate across the aisle. I hope we drill down on health care, because it's important to every family in Eastern Washington and to our economy. And I hope you will vote based on who you trust to be an independent advocate, not clinging to party line or ideology, but actually getting effective solutions.
Thank you. So the first question will go to Chancellor Brown. What would be the best method for Congress to increase the average household income in the 5th Congressional District by 15% within the next 5 to 10 years? Is it tax cuts, increased trade, incentives to relocate high-wage industries? What do you think?
Thank you for that question. I love it. Ever since teaching economics at Eastern Washington University, which is what first got me attached to this community, my economic theory has been very clear. Invest in education and infrastructure. Education in particular, the talent, our future, our young people. And we need to do that from quality early learning and affordable childcare all the way through to skills centers and apprenticeship programs and career technical education, and then all the way through to medical schools, and which we're fortunate to have 2 of here in Spokane. Due to the work I've been able to do with you here in the community, as well as graduate and research institutions as well. So education is number 1. That would pay off most for our economy, and infrastructure is number 2. And when I say infrastructure, I mean also high-speed internet for our rural communities who have been left behind. The 3 counties in Northeast Washington have some of the highest unemployment rates in the state, and that has not diminished over the time that my opponent has been in Congress. We need some real results for all, not just for people at the top, and I believe the tax plan that was recently passed devoted too much of its benefits to those at the top and not to the middle class.
Representative McMorris Rodgers.
This is an important question because America is a land of opportunity. It starts with a job. A job is what gives you purpose and dignity. It's the opportunity for a better life. And I'm grateful for the work that the Rotary does on partnerships for work and so many programs here locally. I am proud of the work that we have done. We made it a priority to get our economy growing at a time when some were saying we couldn't do any better, with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, lifting the regulatory burden. For Eastern Washington, 12,000 new jobs this year. Wages have increased in all 10 of the counties that I represent, anywhere from 3 to 9%. Unemployment in Spokane is at a 20-year low. There are more opportunities today available for people here in Eastern Washington, kids to live the Eastern Washington dream, go to our great universities, and then get a job.
Thank you. We'll stay with you, Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers. Throughout America, unemployment is down, economy appears to be booming, prices on construction, manufacturing, housing, and consumer goods are rising. Is the economy going in the right direction, or are we setting ourselves up for another inflationary period and/or a new debt crisis?
I am encouraged with the growth that we are seeing in our economy. I'm encouraged with the numbers that I just shared, the impact in Eastern Washington. Nationally, we have 7 million job openings, 6 million people on unemployment. It's the first time in a long time that we have had that. And what it means is that individuals that had either on unemployment or had fallen out of the workforce didn't feel like they had, now have an opportunity that they haven't had in a very long time. So this is good. And we just need to keep building on that. As I talk to employers today, what they'll tell me is that they need the workforce. They need the skills, the trades. For housing, affordable housing is very important. Our housing market is tight. Construction companies that are building right now in Spokane have told me that they would like to build more, but they can't find the electricians, the pipe fitters, the welders to do the job. So there is a great opportunity, and we need to make sure that we are getting the workforce needs met. We need to be providing those programs, expanding apprenticeship, expanding pre-apprenticeship, really coming alongside individuals who had given up, and this is the best time to say, let's get you some training, get you into a program, get you a job, because a job is the best anti-poverty program out there.
Well, there are 3 problems with that rosy scenario. Number 1, prices and cost of living is rising faster than wages. And so most people in Eastern Washington are not feeling better off. And in fact, with rents rising and healthcare premiums skyrocketing, in many cases they are actually worse off. The second problem is that this Congress has blown a massive hole in our national debt at a time when the economy was already growing. And now the target is clearly on Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid, and that will hurt Eastern Washington. It's not easy to balance budgets, but it needs to be done. I did it at the state level.
Okay. Lisa, question to you. What have you done and what will you do to ensure everyone in the 5th District has access to health care, whether they have a pre-existing condition or not, and in rural as well as urban areas? The Affordable Care Act, the American Health Care Act, both have their detractors, so what's the solution?
So first, look at the record of what I did in the legislature, because we worked continually. Starting in 1993, I voted to protect people with pre-existing conditions. Just a couple years later, my opponent voted to reverse that protection. We created the breast and cervical cancer screening program, which saved lives and taxpayers' dollars. We maximally expanded the children's health program, and I want to take that same spirit to Congress. The American Health Care Act, which Cathy voted for, was a step backwards. Urban and rural hospitals and the Chamber of Commerce all said it's not good for Eastern Washington's families, it's not good for our economy, and yet she voted for it. We need to take the system that we've got and fix it, especially addressing costs, the cost of prescription drugs. There are solutions. Medicare could negotiate for lower costs for prescription drugs, but this Congress is not making any meaningful progress on health care. In fact, it's been more of a slogan, repeal and replace, some nibbling around the edges. I applaud the work on the opioid crisis, but there are not enough resources being put into that problem. And significantly, the cost issue is created healthcare insecurity for almost every family and business in Eastern Washington.
Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers.
Well, first, I take offense to anyone who would suggest that I would vote to not protect those with pre-existing conditions. I have a son with pre-existing conditions, and that is fundamental to any healthcare reform, is that we're protecting those with pre-existing conditions. I also do not support cuts to Medicare and Social Security. We need healthcare reform. We all agree, we want access to quality and affordable healthcare. We need transparency. We need to know what the actual cost is. We need competition. We need individuals and families and small businesses need to be able to find plans that will meet their needs. Healthcare is very individual. I don't believe that a one-size-fits-all government-run healthcare system is going to best meet your individual needs.
Well, this might actually work out, because the question that Lisa wanted me to ask you is, you frequently say we don't need government-run health care, but Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA are all government-run and an important part of our health care delivery system and our economy. So what do you mean by not having government-run health care?
I don't believe that government-run health care is the solution, in that what happens with government-run health care is that you have a lack of access and you have rising cost, and you don't have the quality. Take Medicare right now. Try to find a new doctor in Eastern Washington who will take a new Medicare patient. It's very difficult. It's an access issue. And yes, I believe that we need to commit to fulfilling the promise that we've made to our seniors. Yet too often, Medicare isn't actually providing the providers what they need. In rural Eastern Washington, rural hospitals are on the verge of closing because Medicare and Medicaid pay fractions of the actual cost of what has been promised. We need to be taking action to secure those programs. Make sure that for seniors, they are going to be secure before we start expanding them. Medicaid, State of Washington worked for years to get a waiver from the federal government to do the innovative approaches that they would like to do on Medicaid. Why don't we free up the state of Washington, commit to the funding for Medicaid, but make sure that the state of Washington can set those best priorities? People with disabilities are on waiting lists right now to get on Medicaid. Medicaid is a vital safety net. And when you expand it without actually taking care of the most vulnerable, that isn't meeting the needs.
Well, so VA is a government-run healthcare system, and we need it secure and not privatized. It's very important for our veterans, including my husband, who's sitting right out here today. Medicare is also a promise and a commitment we've made to our seniors, and we can fix it. It's true that providers here don't always get compensated ideally, but there are providers in other parts of the country, like Florida, that are very happy with their level of compensation. So we need to fix that formula. That's my specialty. I did that with child care when I was at the state level. And Medicaid is a commitment and a partnership between federal and state government that needs to be preserved.
And now, Chancellor Brown, the question to you from Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers. Why did you choose to ignore the will of the people and sue the voters of Washington State to make it easier to raise taxes?
Well, what happened there is that an initiative passed, and many initiatives are flawed. And it was my view that that initiative, and many, that initiative was unconstitutional. And in fact, the Supreme Court found it unconstitutional. In order for the legislature to write the budget, you have to be able to use a simple majority to pass the budget. During the years that we were under that initiative, you couldn't even close a tax loophole without a 2/3 vote, which meant that you ended up with not being able to take care of our state's primary constitutional mandated goal of adequately funding K-12 education. I think the facts bear out that the legislature solved that problem in a bipartisan way after that initiative was found unconstitutional. I am not running for Congress to raise taxes. I'm running for Congress to help fix health care and get federal government investing in education again, like it did when I went to college and Pell Grants paid the entire cost of tuition, or like when many of you had the GI Bill that helped you get your important start and mobility into the middle class.
Representative McMorris Rodgers.
Well, I am concerned that too often Lisa has looked to raising taxes as a solution, when I think that we must look at how we prioritize the federal government. We need to We need a balanced budget amendment. We need to set priorities. We need to go agency by agency, program by program, and make sure that they are being run efficiently and effectively. And I am committed to doing that. I have led the charge on unauthorized spending within the federal government, hundreds of billions of dollars, hundreds of programs that are unauthorized. We need to do our job before we ever start raising taxes, because when we take taxes from you, that is a damper on our economy. I believe that keeping more money in your pockets.
Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers, both of you have pledged not to cut Social Security. However, there are multiple sources indicating that the Social Security Trust Fund will run out of money sometime around the year 2034 or thereabouts. What are ideas and strategies each of you would advocate in order to make sure Social Security will be financially viable for the long term?
Right. This is an important question. And Social Security must be protected for our seniors, near retirees, everyone who is paid into Social Security. We need to make sure that the promise of Social Security is going to be there. We need to look at how we make sure we fulfill that promise. In this political environment, I don't believe this can be done without Republicans and Democrats actually coming together on this one. I don't think one party is going to be able to move forward with Social Security reform. President Trump has said he doesn't want to touch Social Security. So in Congress right now, there's been a lot of other issues that we've been working on. My approach would be to say we need to come together, probably in a major way as a country, Republicans and Democrats, and say we're going to sit down and we're going to look at Social Security and figure out what steps we can agree to do together.
So first of all, Social Security is a universal commitment that we must uphold. We all pay in, including employers, and we're all able to draw on that in our retirement. It's been one of the most successful American programs. It lowered poverty among elderly Americans, and we need to be committed to it. If the trust fund monies run low, all money is green. Money has sometimes been shifted out. It could be shifted into the trust fund. Kathy has voted or has proposed that young people start funneling their contributions into private plans. That is the beginning of the privatization and dismantling of Social Security. That should not occur. And just because President Trump says take it off the table, is it really off the table?
Chancellor Brown, there's an immense backlog of interstate transportation infrastructure repairs improvements needed throughout the U.S. How would you prioritize the federal transportation budget to ensure highway, rail, and air transport needs within the 5th Congressional District receive adequate funding over the next 10 years?
Well, I would work with local and state government on the priorities. That's the appropriate way to move forward. But that would require actually having a federal infrastructure package moving forward in a bipartisan way and financed. And how is it going to be financed given the huge national debt that has literally, the deficit doubled in the last 2 years? So what is going to be the financing of that infrastructure package? So yes, we're going to have to come together in a bipartisan way after the new Congress is in session and look at, first of all, a financing package for infrastructure, and then work with state and local governments to prioritize multimodal transportation investments, but also high-speed internet for our rural counties. They are being left behind. The Spokane Indian, when they invited me to a town hall on the powwow grounds, number one for them is high-speed internet, so when their kids go home after school at night, they can do their homework on the internet like kids right here in Spokane can do. And we have left those communities behind over the last 10 years. Their median income is falling further behind, and we need high-speed internet and transportation infrastructure, which will create jobs and help close that gap between the haves and the have-nots in our own Eastern Washington counties.
Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers.
As our economy continues to grow, infrastructure and workforce development are two big priorities. This Congress has taken action, and I have supported increased support for high-speed internet. We passed the FAA reauthorization, and I was able to get the priorities for the Spokane, Pullman, and Walla Walla airports in the FAA reauthorization, the contract tower observer, the weather observation program. We passed major legislation on waterways. And again, I was able to get the Port of Whitman priority, as well as some upgrades on the Columbia Snake River system, which is very important infrastructure, really the foundation of our economy when you think about the role that it plays in barging our product from agriculture areas to the world and hydropower. Thank you.
You're welcome. Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement comes before Congress next year, basically replacing NAFTA as the agreement between our contiguous trade partners. Is this the answer to free trade, and how will you vote?
Well, I'm pleased that we have reached an agreement. I'm pleased that we have an agreement both with Mexico and with Canada. The goal was to modernize NAFTA. We are all reviewing it right now, but I am inclined to support it. I think that this is an important development, and we need to continue to negotiate these trade agreements. When the president proposed the across-the-board tariffs, I came out opposed to those across-the-board tariffs. We are dependent upon trade, whether it's our farmers, our manufacturers, our innovators. We want to grow it, build it, manufacture it here, and then sell it to the rest of the world. And tariffs are simply taxes that are put on those products and goods. So I think any trade agreement needs to lead with farmers in mind. That's our #1 industry. I am encouraged that the Trump administration is taking action against China. China has been a violator of trade agreements. They've been duplicating our intellectual property. We are innovators as Americans. We celebrate that. But protecting intellectual property rights is so important if we're going to remain competitive, and China hasn't been doing that. But with our allies, we need to get these trade agreements in place. And I've worked with the Japanese flour mill operators to get a letter of intent for them to continue to buy the wheat in Eastern Washington. We signed that in May. But we need to continue to move forward in getting trade agreements.
Chancellor Brown.
Well, I would evaluate the agreement after talking with farmers and ranchers and getting feedback from them, but also I would want to know, is it fair to American workers, and what about environmental standards, and then would make a decision on the agreement, on the new agreement with Mexico and Canada. But what's really missing here is an agreement with our Asian trading partners, and most Eastern Washington wheat goes to Asia. Well, it's not going now because of the tariff and trade war. And farmers have been very clear. They don't want aid, they want trade. This administration is letting them down and making them pay the price of the trade war. And trade wars are not easy to win. Having identified the problem of China doesn't mean we've identified the right solution, and tariffs are not it.
Sticking with you, Chancellor Brown. What do you think are the greatest barriers to home ownership facing young families today? From a federal housing policy perspective, do you believe Congress should develop programs that allow every American to become a homeowner should he or she desire? If yes, how? If no, why not?
Well, what's facing young families is the crushing burden of student loan debt, and that has not been addressed by this Congress, and it needs to be addressed by this Congress. Rather than letting the interest rates rise, as Kathy voted for, we need to lower the interest rates on that debt and look for ways to actually give them pauses when they're doing public service, for example, with the debt. Also, wages have not been rising more than the cost of living, and that's holding young people back. What the federal government can do here is expand their tax credit programs for affordable and market rate housing. Those have been used successfully here in Washington State, and I've been told by our housing advocates here that they could happily engage with more of those projects. And they're really win-wins because we We get the jobs from the construction of the housing, and we get to relieve the pressure on supply of housing. So it's good for business, and it's good for people that need affordable housing. This Congress is going in the wrong direction with its big picture fiscal policies. I'm very concerned that that we are close to a new recession, and with both interest rates rising and next unemployment will be rising because of the recession, the irresponsible fiscal policies of artificially overheating the economy in the 2 years before the election, we are going to have to pay the price.
As I think about the dream of home ownership, which I think is a big part of the American dream for young people, yes, we need to make sure that we are addressing the cost of tuition, and I have worked in a constructive way on that, and making sure that it's affordable. But getting a job is foundational. You know, that is a key to that better life and the Eastern Washington dream. For affordable housing, I mentioned that we have needs right now in Eastern Washington for more homes to be built. In the tax bill, when we went into conference committee, my priority, one of my 3 priorities, but one was the private activity bonds that are used locally by developers here.
Okay, thank you. So this is one that each candidate will get a version of this, but to Representative McMorris Rodgers. In a poll of Republicans conducted on September 19th, 2018, the following were listed as the top leaders of your party in descending order: Donald Trump, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and Mike Pence. With whom on that list do you most closely align politically, and why?
That's a good question. You know, I've had the opportunity to work very closely with Paul Ryan, so I think I'm gonna choose Paul Ryan. I've been proud of his leadership in the House, and he's someone that has always been a servant leader. He's never forgotten that it's about the people and making sure that we keep the people of this country and making sure that we have freedom and opportunity for everyone in this country. I'm proud that the Republican Party has a rich history in really being the party, whether it was with Abraham Lincoln and making sure that we were the party that welcomed the African Americans at the time. I'm proud that Susan B. Anthony led the charge for women's right to vote. She was a Republican. I'm proud of the Republicans that were a part of the civil rights movement. And the Republican Party has a rich history of respecting every person's dignity and value. And I want everyone in this country to have an opportunity for a better life. I want them to be able to get a great education. When I talk about the Eastern Washington dream, it's the dream of our young people being able to live in this great corner of the world. It's beautiful in Eastern Washington. We have a great quality of life. Be able to go to one of our universities and colleges and then be able to find a job here, not feel like they have to leave Eastern Washington to find that great paying job. I want us to be a center for research and innovation so that young people will want to come here, and that will be the place that people want to live.
Chancellor Brown.
So response and
To
then
the Republican?
And then
What do you think of her answer?
Well, I'll just start by saying that I think that in general, Republicans value following the leader probably more than Democrats do. And I think that can be a strength in some circumstances. I observe that in the legislature, but I also think it can be a weakness. And right now I think it's a weakness because I think we need a Congress that will stand up and challenge this administration when it does things that are harmful for Eastern Washington or when it does things that are just plain wrong, like separating parents from kids at the border. And so at this point in time, I think independence should be more valued.
Okay. I want everyone to know that I work for the people of Eastern Washington. I work for the 700,000 people that I have the honor of representing. And when I look, I'm proud of a record of leadership and results. All of the legislation that I've introduced and that has passed the House this Congress has enjoyed bipartisan support. I've had 10 bills that have passed, 5 signed into law. Everything from forestry to agriculture to small businesses to healthcare to helping kids with disabilities. I am proud to be someone that worked across the aisle. I am concerned about the political discourse today. I have led the last 2 years holding unity dinners in our community to bring diverse people together so that we can at least talk to each other. If we can't talk to each other, we're not going to be able to solve problems. I have led in a peaceful community roundtable, again, to talk about our community. My vision is that we will be the model right here in Eastern Washington, that we're going to be the place, so we're going to figure this out.
Thank you. Chancellor Brown. In a poll of Democrats conducted on September 19th, 2018, the following were identified as the top leaders of your party. In descending order: Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, and Bernie Sanders. With whom on that list do you most closely align politically?
Barack Obama, for sure. Had the opportunity to meet him, and I respect him tremendously. And I like the fact that he started out in the state legislature, and I believe he accomplished some really important things in his administration. But I also think he set a standard for decency and lack of scandal that I wish we still had in our country. I grew up in a Republican family, and I became a Democrat, as my parents feared I would, in college. Because of people like Bobby Kennedy, because of the civil rights movement, because I felt that Democrats stood up for the people that were left out, and that squared very closely also with my Catholic upbringing. And I'm proud to be a Democrat, but we know we say about our party, I'm not part of an organized party, I'm a Democrat, because there is a lot more room for diversity and disagreement with our leaders. And I think that's what we need right now. I would happily go to Congress and disagree with the leadership of my party if it wasn't in the best interest of Eastern Washington agriculture. I'd like to serve on the House Agriculture Committee and really advocate for this district.
Thank you. You want to do a rebut that?
I'm not sure.
So then I guess we'll move on. Let's see, am I here next? Thank you. Okay, just making sure. So, well, both candidates will have the answer, both candidates will have the chance to answer this question, starting with Representative McMorris Rodgers. Please comment on how your candidacy or congressional term would fulfill Rotary's four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Well, maybe I'll reflect a little bit on the last 2 years. And I mentioned I've been hosting unity dinners. It's been one of the most positive things that I have done since I've been in Congress. I know we often get caught up in the legislation and the votes and the issues, and it's very important, and it makes a difference. But I have been reminded the importance of relationships, of building goodwill, of better friendships. And I have been reminded that even those that you may not agree with, or you think, oh, I don't have a lot in common with them, you know, if you actually go have a cup of coffee with them, if you go out to dinner and put the cell phones away. I had one lady come to a unity dinner, and she says, I don't agree with any of your votes, Kathy. It was one of those unity dinners that actually didn't go quite that well, right? But we had a good discussion. But you know what? I did a reunion of the unity dinners, and she came back, which surprised me. And she said, you know, I haven't been spending as much time on social media, and I've actually committed now on Fridays that I'm going to write notes of encouragement to one another. I appreciate this test. I think it is important, and I think each one of us should be taking to heart what we can be doing in our community. And I know each of you do as Rotarians, and I appreciate your example. But we...
Thank you.
Well, I think the attack ads failed the test. pretty overwhelmingly in terms of how they characterize my record and the low level of the personal attacks that have been made. In Congress, I would really like to get the second part of the test, fairness, done by helping Eastern Washington get its fair share of national resources, like I made sure we got our fair share of state resources. We have an Eastern Washington Veterans Cemetery because they had one on the west side and not over here. We have the Northwest Autism Center because they had one over there but not over here. And I would like to work with Republicans and Democrats, and especially our Northwest delegation. I'd like to work with my colleagues in Idaho, and let's start working for real solutions to the issues that plague us.
Chancellor Brown, would you please share one bipartisan success story?
Thank you. Yes, one that I'm very proud of. There are a couple of them that are significant in my mind, but one in particular is the state's rainy day fund. Most people in my party were not in favor of a rainy day fund, but I felt it was really important to stabilize our economy. I'd gone through writing a budget in a downturn, and it was so painful looking at cuts to health care and cuts to K-12 education. We did it, but I didn't want any other majority leader to ever have to do what I had to do, and I knew if we had a rainy day fund, then there would be something for them to draw on. So I worked on that constitutional amendment with Senator Joe Zarelli. We didn't agree on a lot of things, but we agreed on that. We got the 2/3 vote easily in the Senate. The House was not so excited about it. I had to call on Governor Gregoire to put pressure on Speaker Chop in the House and Representative Summers to get that bill out, but we did. It overwhelmingly passed the public, and we have a more fiscally responsible state budget and a state rainy day fund where funds flow in during the good times and we can draw on them in the bad times. I'd love to take that type of bipartisan spirit to Congress right now. We are not going to solve this huge national debt problem that has sadly been exacerbated dramatically in the last couple of years if we don't do it in a bipartisan way.
Representative McMorris Rodgers.
Yes, it's been frustrating to have my record also mischaracterized during this campaign. I don't support cuts to Medicare or Social Security. I've never voted to eliminate coverage for those with pre-existing conditions. The only dark money in this campaign or television ads have come from supporters of my opponent. But you know what? It all makes you better too in the midst of it. The bipartisan success that I want to highlight is the work to bring a successful residency program to Eastern Washington. And Lisa has said, well, that was part of the Affordable Care Act, which it was. The grants were made available. But they're 5-year grants that had expired.
I think we have time for one more question before we go to closing statements, and that would go to Representative McMorris Rodgers. And I'd like to end on something of a positive note, if we may. Who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Well, it's the hardworking people of Eastern Washington that I get to meet every day. I am inspired when I travel around Eastern Washington and I get to meet people in all of the communities. It's a large district, 10 counties, and I meet people every day that are doing their part in a whole host of ways. The small business owner who has taken the ultimate risk and started a business. Those who are serving in law enforcement and our police and sheriffs on the front lines. Our educators, those that are educating our kids. I'm always so impressed and inspired by our teachers and all of the others that are in our schools. And I meet people that are meeting needs in their communities in so many different ways, nonprofits. And it's a reminder to me that it does take each one of us doing our part to come together to build healthy communities. But I have often reflected on my amazing experience, and the honor that I've had in representing this district has been the amazing people that I get to meet. And it wasn't It's been just, it inspires me every day, and it makes me want to work harder. When I return to Washington, D.C., I only want to work harder to address the challenges that we face. Yes, work across the aisle wherever possible, but get results.
Thank you. Chancellor Brown.
Young people, thing I miss about my time at Eastern and Gonzaga and WSU is interacting with those young people every day. I love their energy and I love what they represent about our future. I love millennials in particular, how skeptical they are of organized anything. People like my son, but they are into music and culture. They're very open and accepting of each other and of differences, and that's very inspiring to me. I've gotten to meet dreamers, and I'm sad for the situation that they've been put in, but I'm hopeful for them, and I know they just want to get their education and bring things back to their families and their communities. I hope we make that happen for them.
Thank you very much. Okay, now it's time for closing statements, and Chancellor Brown, you have the first closing statement.
And can I use my 1 minute?
You may.
All right. 2.5 minutes, John. Thank you so much. You're here because you care about your community, as Rotarians clearly do, giving back so much, and because you care about the future of our country as well. I'd like to say that there really is a very significant issue we haven't touched on this afternoon, and that is, did you know that 40% of the money that flows into the super PACs, the dark money out there, comes from just 50 donors around the country? And I don't care whether they support Democrats or Republicans, that's not right. We need to take back our campaign system, our election system, reduce interference in it, and make sure that we're responding to people and their concerns, not the special interests that I believe are really jamming up the system. And I believe that Cathy is very comfortable with the current system, and I want to have reform of it be #1 on my agenda. And after 14 years, I think it is time for a change. I'm not going into this as a career. I've had great careers working with many of you to accomplish things for our community, and so this is not a career for me. To me, this is another chapter of public service. I don't even intend to enter the federal pension system because I don't want to be there that long. Sorry, Brian, you might not have known that, but because I really would like to improve health care for Eastern Washington and education, and having a chance to do that and then pass the baton to one of those younger people would be a wonderful thing. I would be honored to have your vote in this election, and then I will do what I have always done. I will continue to live here, listen to you. I will not go there with a 10-point program. That's why I didn't choose Hillary Clinton in the previous question. I will go there and hear from you as to what you think our challenges and opportunities are. And we have plenty of both, but we can make progress on them, working together, bringing stakeholders together, not just dividing us, talking about who's got Seattle values, whatever they are, or who is jobs versus the environment. We can make progress on both.
Thank you, Chancellor Brown. Representative McMorris Rodgers.
The American way has done more to lift people out of poverty, raise the standard of living than any other country in the world. And I wake up every morning focused on how we can make sure that that dream continues for our children and our grandchildren. America was built on hard work and perseverance. And protecting this legacy, this bold experiment in self-governance, is what inspires me. I'm proud of my record of leadership and results on the issues that matter the most here in Eastern Washington. And the work has paid off. The economy is booming. People have an opportunity for a better life, to get that job that is so foundational. 12,000 new jobs in Eastern Washington this year. Wages are up 3 to 9% in all of the counties that I represent. And hope and optimism is at a 20-year high. It's a little different than where we were 2 years ago. When I put my children to bed at night, You know, I'm not thinking about House Bill such and such or the omnibus. You know, what I am thinking about is their future, and their future that is going to mean a good paying job, a safe community, healthy families. Let's not go backwards. Let's keep striving towards that bright future. Yes, we face challenges. My commitment is to listen. It is to understand the concerns and then work to get results. I'm Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers. It's been an honor to represent you, and I ask for your vote on November 6th.
Thank you very much, former Chancellor Lisa Brown, Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers. Please let's give our guests a hand.